Welcome back to the What Life, guys. We are diving in for another Zwift monthly race. We did this one on Monday. It's now Wednesday, 3 p.m. I was going to do this Cat B, but then I realized that there were, I think it was like 50 or 40 people signed up for the Cat C race, and I thought that's good numbers. So the Cat C race will be good. So let's roll. The more people in a race, obviously, the faster the race ends up being. I think, obviously, you just get the higher the numbers, the higher the chances that there are good riders in the race, which is why I thought, right, rather than doing a Cat B, if it had been smaller numbers, I would have done a small Cat B race, but the numbers were big. I got no idea what everyone else is doing on Wednesday at 3 p.m. that lets them in the UK that lets them sit on a Zwift trainer for 40 minutes, but that was also my situation, so I was more than happy to dive in on a race. I will warn you now, I do not make the finish line. We did this race on Monday. It's 5 loops of the same circuit, short climb, half gravel, half road. I think it's 20 odd K, 12 and a half miles. I don't make the finish, but there's a really exciting bridge that ends up happening that I'm really proud of. I was really happy with my performance on that, but my legs were really hurting because we went hard on the Monday race. That really took it out of me, and obviously I'm trying to train in between. I am 2 weeks into a structured training program, and while I say structured, and I use that term quite lightly, I am finding it's benefiting me, but obviously there are times when I feel good and times when I don't feel so good. And today, doing this climb, it really hurt. 5 times anyway, or I made it 4 times. So we're in the pack, and you can see that it's a really big front group, which makes it a little bit more difficult. I've actually swapped out my kit this week, so I'm rolling in the Rouleur kit. Is anyone else getting a bit tired, bit kind of bored with some of the Zwift kits? How do we make them? Well, how do we get some better kits in the game? There's some really nice kits out on the market today. I'm looking at some kind of map jerseys, and they're all like really changing their styles, and they all look really good. How do we get that to translate into Zwift? Anyway, chat for another time. So we came up to the first climb, and having done this a bunch of times now, I try and hold around that 350 mark. And then I actually found that the first time we went up this, the wattage was a little bit soft, or it felt that way anyway, so this was very manageable for me, hence the reason I'm sitting at the front of this front group. I think there's about 15 to 18 of us in this lead group at the moment, and we seem to have done a pretty good job of kind of breaking up the whole race so that the front group are just, we are a ways off. So this is the group that we're going to ride in, and I imagine this is the group that is going to get broken up as the race goes on, and you can see on the mini map top right that it is spreading out already. The climbs are probably some of the more interesting parts. I'm not sure who this person up front is, but he was definitely putting in the effort. A French lad putting in the effort on all the climbs, and he did very well. I don't know who won this race. Totally lost interest in it after getting my arse dropped on lap 4. But you can see that there are a few guys that are happy to push the wattage. I thought that if we come up this hill first time and we strung the group out, there's no point putting in the effort to get up that hill and then not try and kind of break the group up a little bit. If you're going to put the effort on the hill, you might as well try and spread the group out. So it looks like we probably drop a few people and thin the group a little bit, but then Zwift Dynamics is very good at bringing groups back together, which is why you get people kind of fly past you and then just stop in front of you. That's part of the game. Zwift loves doing that. It encourages people to ride in big groups, because that's what it does, and that's why it makes it hard when you're attacking to get away from a chase group sometimes. So this is still lap 1, just finishing it off. Nothing too crazy on the wattage, and again, heart rate. I just did a quick video on heart rate. If you are interested, check it out. I don't have a power meter on my bike when I'm outside, so what I do is I pay a lot of attention to my heart rate when I'm racing on Zwift, because obviously I get all my information, watts, power, cadence. I don't have that outside. I only really get my heart rate on my Garmin computer. So Did a quick video on how like I translate that to riding outside and the effort that I think I can put in and things like that. So I thought that was quite an interesting video if you are looking to ride outside and you don't have a power meter but you do have a heart rate monitor. So heart rate, seeing as we're talking about it, is 139, 140, which is very comfortable for me, below threshold. So the pace is nice and we're moving in a big group. The only thing I can point out is that my legs were a little bit tired. Moving pretty well, but there's still a huge number of us. And I actually felt like we were moving quite well, and I felt like this was going to be a slightly quicker race. So I think the reality is that in total, I think there's meant to be around, I think like 32 minutes. And I felt like between 32 to 34 minutes this race. And I think that if I carried on and managed to make the finish line with the front group, we'd definitely be closer to the 32-minute mark than we would the 34, 35. So it did feel quick. Coming up the climb for a second time, coming into this race, I did decide that because I was racing it for a second time, I wanted to try and race it properly. And as soon as I realised that we were riding in a big group rather than people just attacking left, right and centre, I did kind of want to make sure that I didn't do anything too crazy. I thought that if anything did happen, just be in a position to go with them, and this comes massively into play on lap 3 into lap 4, and we'll skip to that bit in a second, because my goal here was to not quite sit at the back of the pack, because I know that this course can break up quite quickly and quite easily, and if you get caught on the wrong side of the break, it's hell trying to bridge, and that's exactly what happens to me and exactly how I get dropped, and we'll get to that in a bit. But coming up the climb for a second time, you can see it's the same two guys that are leading off the front, and then that kind of made me think that these guys are two of the stronger riders, and if anything was going to break and if they were going to split, then you need to be within touching distance of them so that they don't just completely disappear off into the ether. And this is the problem that I end up facing as we come round to finish lap 2 off. Lap 3, that's basically exactly what happens, and then I have to absolutely kill myself to try and bridge, but it was a wicked move and I did love doing it. It's just the fact that I did it and then couldn't carry on. So you probably notice that we have maybe 14 people up front now. So it's still quite a good group, good sized group, maybe 16 people, good sized group up front. And the problem is that if we're going to break up the group, then we have to do something drastically. We'll have to do something drastic, and that's the difficult thing is getting a couple of people to work with you so that the back of the group doesn't just end up riding on. And I know that is super hard, bridging super hard, and it does take it out of people. But at the same time, if you're going to put the effort in to do the climb, then you might as well try and ride off and kind of break the group up. And this is what's happened. So this is where the action comes in, guys, because we're coming up to the climb for the third time, and I'm pretty sure it's the same guys or the same kind of culprits, same riders that come into this one. I didn't want to get caught. I was flagging a little bit. I was definitely finding it hard, so I didn't want to get caught at the back at the start of the climb. So part of this was me trying to get a good position coming into the climb. That was my main goal, because I kind of had the inkling that a few guys were going to ride off the front. So we'll just speed up the climb. I didn't want to get caught at the back of the climb, because I knew that something was going to happen based on the fact that the last 2 climbs there have been like little half breaks. And there's the same guy, he goes off front, and a different guy goes off front. And then there's the guy, so those two, the blue jersey and the guy in the grey, have been up the front of every single climb. And then we get to the top of this one, and you can see me having to dig a little bit of wattage to try and stay with them. And I'm touching 170 HR now, so that's really hurting. Normally, as you get to the top of a climb, this little bit down here, you can go a little bit easier. And I was having to jump on the pedals to try and stay with these front 3, because I knew that if they broke, then they might disappear off into the ether, and that might be the complete end of it. So I was happy to throw caution into the wind, but at this stage I am basically just falling off those front 3, and I'm not riding with a group. So I'm kind of in no man's land, which is not the place you want to be. So I came off the pedals a little bit and just thought, well, if I can get my heart rate down a couple of beats, once we hit the road, we can go for it. So slowed down a little bit and waited for the group to come through as the dynamics of Zwift kind of uses that elasticity to just bring them back up to me. And then you just jump on the pedals to make sure that they don't whiz completely past. And then we now have our little crew. I'm pretty sure one guy managed to do the bridge. And these two that I'm with now look like they are trying to catch that front group. So if I can stay with them, then there's a half a chance we end up back on those front four. And we have a nice little 7-8 person front group. The problem is that we have to work quite hard to get there, and that's basically the issue. And this is where I decide, right, they're in touching distance now, I have to go now, otherwise this bridge is not going to happen. Jump on the pedals nice and hard, like proper hard. This is the thing that actually took me out. My heart rate starts hitting 171. Bring the few guys up with me. One guy obviously drops off the front group. And this is where it really hurt. Like 171, 172 on the heart rate, and this basically is the move that took me out of the ride, which was bridging to this front group. And I feel like a little bit that I kind of helped bring a few guys up. But once we make this front group, I am absolutely blowing, like absolutely killed me. And that's like the point that I knew that, right, we've only got a few more turns and then we're going up a climb again for the fourth time. And that was probably going to be the thing that takes me out of the game. Guys at the front are actually riding, obviously you can see riding really, really well. So they haven't actually kind of come off the watts at all. So I've gone straight from a bridge to now having to ride quite hard to stay on the group. And you can see me trying to recover as much as possible, try and get my heart rate back down as much as possible. And then, lo and behold, we're back to a big old group of like 9 people. So I don't know whether, I mean, the bridge was obviously worth it. I'm not sure whether I needed to lead it. I think maybe I could have just tried sitting on a few other people's wheels. It looks like there's a few strong guys riding in this group. I do question whether they'll all end up on Zwift Power or whether they are, or whether they kind of are registered for Zwift Power or whether they're just regular Zwift users. But we had a fast group, and this is me basically just trying to get my heart rate back down, which we managed to do. And you'll realize that this is actually a gentle incline on this part of the pavement, very small incline, and our pace comes off nicely, as I think everyone is kind of paying the price for moving so quickly, and all the little moves that just happened on that third lap. And that was the interesting bit. That was my favorite part of the race, was that little kind of attack from the guys at the front off the top of the climb, and then us having to bridge to get the group back together. The only problem was that we're now heading back into a climb, and I'm like running on empty. I'm out of gas. But I did think, seeing as I am in a big training month, I got another 4 weeks of training, and then we'll do an FTP again. I did want to kind of give it a bit of an effort, just to kind of see how I fared. Just kind of put the legs through the ringer a little bit on this last climb. So if this is it, this is basically the end of it. All you're going to do now is watch me kind of fall off the back of this front group as we go up this last climb. I definitely feel like we're moving quickly. It would have been a quick race. I'm sure the guys up front would have probably had finished on very good times, especially for a Cat C group. And it was a fun little smash out. As for bike choices, I'm pretty sure that most people on this ride were on road bikes. I asked before we even started, I was like, who's on a dirt bike? And I'm not sure, one or two guys said they were on dirt bikes. I'm not sure whether they end up in the front group or not. But I had my inclination that the same two guys who have led up the hills were going to lead up the hills again, which is our Frenchman in the blue top, who's now at the front, and the gent in the blue Zwift backwards cap, and the grey jersey. And as we kind of watched myself slowly die a death on the bike, and then we come into the climb, and this is just absolutely what kills me. It's still nice to be on the group. Probably should have done a bit more spinning to get the lactate out my legs after the race, because I literally just collapse off the bike and then go straight to needing food and just making myself eat as much food as possible. But then you can basically, if I had held this group up this last climb, this fourth climb, then I might have probably tried to carry on and make the finish line. But we're coming up here, and it felt like it was quite a quick climb as well. I like rather unnecessarily. I'm leading the group a little bit, but only because I didn't want to fall off the back. And then I just realised that this is too much for me. My heart rate actually isn't rising, so that's a sure sign that I'm really struggling now, because I'm trying to put the watts in, but I just can't get my heart rate high enough, and I can't work hard enough. So it's interesting. We talk about it, repeatability in cycling, like how many times can you do something. I think I just ran out of repeats, and that's me, job done. Thanks for joining, guys. We will see you on the next one, probably next week now, for another race.